Hello everyone, welcome back to my class. This is Mehjabin Fatima, a teacher at Elizabeth High School and Junior College. So, in this session we are going to study, as we have started theme 3, that is political system and governance. So, in this session we are going to study the 14th chapter, that is Mughal Empire. So, in this theme we are studying about the kings and their kingdoms. So, let's see about the Mughal Empire now. Let's begin with our chapter. A new dynasty called Mughals began with the invasion of Babur in 1526 CE. They created an empire between 1550 CE and 1707 CE and expanded it from around Delhi to all over the entire subcontinent. So, there was a new dynasty which has been emerged, that is Mughals, with the invasion of Babur in the year 1526 CE, and this empire has been created between 1550 CE to 1707 CE, and it expanded from Delhi to all over the other entire continent. Their administrative arrangement, ideas of governance and architecture continue to influence rulers long after their decline. Now, every year the Prime Minister of India addresses the nation on Independence Day from the ramparts of the Red Fort in Delhi, which was once the residence of the Mughal emperors. So, now when we will see every year the Prime Minister of India, he will address the nation on Independence Day from the ramparts of the Red Fort, which is in Delhi and which was one of the residence of the Mughal emperors. Let us see about who were the Mughals. The Mughals were from ruling families of Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan and Mongolia. Babur, the first Mughal emperor, was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to an invasion by another ruler. After years of wandering, he seized Kabul in the year 1504 CE. In 1526 CE, he defeated the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, and captured Delhi and Agra. So, these Mughals, they are from the ruling families of Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan and Mongolia, we can say. And Babur, he was the first Mughal emperor who was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to an invasion of another ruler. And after wandering for some years, he seized the Kabul in the year 1504, and in the year 1526 he defeated the Sultan of Delhi, that is Ibrahim Lodi, and he captured Delhi and Agra. Let us see about the relationship of the Mughals with other rulers. Around the time when Mughals came to India, there were several kings and chiefs in all parts of the country. The Mughals sought to bring them under their control. They allowed the older rulers and chiefs to continue to rule over large parts of their old kingdoms and collected revenues from them. But these rulers could not wage wars against each other and had to keep an army ready for use of the emperor. Mughal rulers campaigned constantly against rulers who refused to accept their authority. But as the Mughals became powerful, many other rulers had to surrender their sovereignty. Some Rajput kings also entered into matrimonial alliances with them, but many resisted as well. The Sisodia Rajputs of Chittor refused to accept Mughal authority for a long time. So, around the time when these Mughals they came in our country India, there were several kings and chiefs who were ruling our country at that time. So, these Mughals they sought to bring them under their control. So, these Mughals they tried to have a control over these kings and chiefs, and they allowed the older rulers and chiefs to continue to rule over large part of their kingdom, and these Mughals they have collected revenues from them, and these rulers they could not wage wars against each other, and they had to keep an army ready for the use of the emperor. And Mughal emperors they have campaigned constantly against rulers who had refused their authority, but the Mughals they became so much powerful that the rulers have to surrender their sovereignty to them. Once defeated, however, they were given the lands back as assignments. Mughals also employed the method of not removing their opponents after defeating. This helped them to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. As a political strategy, Mughals married princesses of the local rulers. Jahangir's mother was the daughter of the Rajput rulers of Amber. Shah Jahan's mother was the daughter of the Rajput ruler of Jodhpur. So, these Mughals they have tried a new policy. Even after defeating their opponent, they are not removing them from their kingdom, as it was helping them to extend their influence over many other kings and chieftains by this way, and they have also applied a political strategy where these Mughals they have married with the princesses of the local rulers. Whereas we can see that Jahangir's mother was the daughter of the Rajput ruler of Amber, and again Shah Jahan's mother was the daughter of the Rajput ruler who was from the Jodhpur. Let's see about the Mansabdars and Jagirdars. As the empire expanded to encompass different regions, the Mughals recruited diverse kinds of people. From a small nucleus of Turkish nobles, they expanded to include Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas and other groups. So, as the empire expanded, as this Mughal empire expanded, we can say they have encompasses different regions, and the Mughals they have recruited diverse kinds of people who are from the different countries, and they form a small nucleus of Turkish nobles, and these people they have expanded to include Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs and other groups also. So, those whoever have joined this Mughals service, they have enrolled themselves as Mansabdars. They work directly under the control of the emperor, who could allocate any work for them to do, like guarding his palace, governing a province, conquering a new kingdom or suppressing a rebellion. So, these people, those who have joined as a Mansabdars to these Mughals, they should work directly under the control of the emperor, who could allocate any work for them, such as the work may include like guarding the palace, governing a province, conquering a new kingdom, etc. The Mughals designed a political system in which the Mansabdars could not act independently but had to follow the orders of the emperor. You may remember that the Nayakas in Vijayanagara Empire could become independent and powerful enough to declare themselves the king. The Mughals prevented this by constantly transferring the Mansabdars from one place to another every 2 or 3 years. Thus, a Mansabdar could not get settled and powerful in any one place. So, these Mughals they have designed their political system in such a way that Mansabdars they could not act independent. They cannot act freely. So, wherever these Mansabdars are kept to do the work, after a certain period of time, these Mughals will change their place, so that they could not feel powerful by staying at that particular place. So, with the help of these Mughals, they have prevented this problem by constantly transferring the Mansabdars from one place to another place after 2 to 3 years. A Mansabdar son could not become a Mansabdar automatically, that is, the transfer of power was not hereditary. The emperor decided whether to appoint the son as a Mansabdar or not. In fact, he even took over all the property of the Mansabdar on his death. So, if Mansabdar's son is there, he cannot become a Mansabdar directly. He should be appointed by the emperor if he wants. If the emperor's wish is there to make that person or to make the son of Mansabdar as Mansabdar, then only he can make. Otherwise, he cannot appoint a Mansabdar's son as a Mansabdar. And even the emperor can took over all the property of the Mansabdar on his death. Mansabdars received their salaries as revenue assignments called Jagirs, which were somewhat like Vijayanagara Amaranayakas. But unlike the Amaranayakas, most Mansabdars did not actually reside in or administer their Jagirs. They could only collect the revenue due from their Jagir villages and send them to the emperor. This was collected from them by their servants, while the Mansabdars themselves served in some other parts of the country. The Jagir was administered by other officials directly under the emperor. So, these Mansabdars they will receive their salary as a revenue assignment, which we can call it as Jagir, and which was somewhat like Vijayanagara Amaranayakas. Unlike we saw in Amaranayakas, most Mansabdars they did not actually reside in the administrator with Jagir, but from their Jagir villages they send them to the emperors, and the Jagir is administered by other officials directly under the emperor. By Aurangzeb's reign, there was a huge increase in the number of Mansabdar, which meant a long wait before they received a Jagir. These and other factors created a shortage in the number of Jagirs. As a result, many Jagirdars tried to extract as much revenue as possible while they had a Jagir. Aurangzeb was unable to control these developments in the last years of his reign, and the farmers therefore suffered tremendously. So, by the time of Aurangzeb's reign, there was a huge increase in the number of the Mansabdars, means the number of Mansabdars was more, and which meant that there is a long wait before they could receive the Jagir, and these and other factors, they have created a shortage in the number of jagirs. So as a result to this, many Jagirdars, they tried to extract as much as revenue as they can, but Aurangzeb, he was not able to control these developments in the last years of his reign and the farmers, so therefore he had suffered tremendously. Let's see about the Zabt and Zamindars. The main source of income available to Mughal rulers was taxes on the produce of the peasantry. Akbar's revenue minister Todar Mal carried out a careful survey of crop yields, prices and areas cultivated for a period of 10 years, 1570 to 1580 CE. On the basis of this data, tax was fixed in cash for each group. Each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule of revenue rates for individual crop. This revenue system was known as Zabt. It was prevalent in those areas where Mughal administrators could survey the land and keep very careful accounts. This was not possible in provinces such as Gujarat and Bengal. So, the main source of income available to Mughal rulers was the taxes and the produce of the peasantry, we can say. And there is a person whose name is Todar Mal, who was a revenue minister of Akbar. He carried out a survey very carefully of a crop yield, prices and areas cultivated for a period of 10 years. And on the basis of this data, tax was fixed in cash for each crop, and each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule of revenue for individual crop. This revenue system was known as Zabt. In most places, peasants paid taxes through the rural elite, that is the headman or the local chieftain. The Mughals used the term zamindars to describe all the intermediaries, whether they were local headmen of villages or powerful chieftains. The zamindars were not appointed by the Mughal emperors but existed on hereditary basis, that is, sons succeeded when the fathers died. They too had contingents of armed followers. They received a share of the revenue collected by the Jagirdars from the area and also some dues from the farmers and others. They often acted as representatives of the local people in dealing with the Mughal officials. So, in the most places, the farmers, they used to pay the taxes through the rural elite, and for the headman and the local chieftain, the Mughals, they use one term, that is zamindar. So, whether they were the local headman of the villages or the powerful chieftains, they were called as the zamindars at the time. And zamindars, they were not appointed by the emperors directly, but they exist on the hereditary basis. Means if the father died, the son will become the zamindar. And they too had contingents of armed followers. And these zamindars, they will receive a share of revenue which is collected by the Jagirdars from the area and also some dues from the farmers and others. In some areas, the zamindars exercised a great deal of power. The exploitation by Mughal administration could drive them to rebellion. Sometimes zamindar and peasants allied in rebelling against the Mughal authority. These zamindar peasant revolts changed the stability of the Mughal empire from the end of the 17th century. So, in some areas we can see these zamindars, they have exercised a great deal of power, where these all zamindars, they were united and they have revolted against these Mughals, and they have challenged the stability of the Mughal empire, and by the end of the 17th century. Let us have a close look at Akbar's policies. The broad features of administration were laid down by Akbar and were elaborately discussed by his friend and member of his court, Abul Fazl, in his book An Akbarnama. So, we can see more about this Akbar in the book by his friend, that is Abul Fazl, and the book name is Akbarnama. While Akbar was at Fatehpur Sikri, during the 1570s, he initiated important discussions on religion with the Muslim scholars, Hindu scholars, Jesuit Christ, who were Roman Catholics and Zoroastrians. He was interested in the religion and social customs of different people. Akbar wanted to bring together people of diverse faiths. This eventually gave him the idea of Sulekul, or universal peace. This idea of tolerance did not discriminate among people of different religions in the kingdom. Instead, it focused on a system of ethics, honesty, justice, peace that was universally applicable. Abul Fazl helped Akbar in framing a vision of governance around his idea of Sulekul. The emperor could work for the welfare of all subjects irrespective of their religion or social status. This principle of governance was followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan as well. Aurangzeb deviated from this policy and tried to project himself up favoring only Sunni Muslims. People of other religions felt anguished by this policy of Aurangzeb. So this Akbar, he has focused mainly on the religion. He was from the Fatehpur Sikri, which is near to Agra, and during the 1570s he started an important discussion on religion with the Muslim scholars, Hindu scholars, Jesus Christ and some Roman Catholics. And he was so much interested in religion and social customs of different people and their different faith. And Akbar wanted to bring together the people from the diverse faiths. So this eventually gave Akbar the idea of the Sulekul, which is called as the universal peace. So this idea, it will teach the people, or it will focus on a system of ethics like honesty, justice, peace, etc. And this idea did not discriminate among people of different religions and the kingdom. So his friend, who was Abul Fazl, he helped Akbar in framing a vision of governance around this idea of Sulekul. And same this principle of Akbar was followed by other rulers or other governors such as Jahangir and Shah Jahan as well. And Aurangzeb, he deviated from this policy and he tried to project himself by favoring only one religion, that is Sunni Muslim, and people of other religions, they felt anguished by this policy of the Aurangzeb. Let's have a look at Mughal Empire in the 17th century and thereafter. The administrative and military efficiency of the Mughal Empire led to economic and commercial prosperity. International travelers described it as the fabled land of wealth, but the same visitors were also appealed for the state of poverty that existed in contrast to the greatest wealth. The inequalities were glaring. Documents from the 20th century of Shah Jahan's reign inform us that the highest ranking Mansabdars were only 445 in number out of the total 8,000. The small number, a mere 5.6% of the total number of Mansabdars, received 61.5% of the total estimated revenue of the empire as salaries for themselves and their troopers. So the administrative and military efficiency of the Mughal Empire, it led to economic and commercial prosperity. And international travelers, they have described as a fabled land of wealth, but the same time some visitors also appealed the state of poverty that existed in the contrast of greatest wealth. And the inequalities were glaring. Documents from the 20th century of Shah Jahan's reign. And it informs us that the highest ranking Mansabdars were only 445 in number out of 8,000. The Mughal emperors and their Mansabdars spent a great deal of their income on salaries and goods. The scale of revenue collection left very little for money for investment in the hands of the primary producers. The peasant and the artisans, the poorest among them, had barely enough resources for existence and could hardly invest in tools and supplies to increase productivity. So these Mughal emperors and their Mansabdars, they have spent a great deal of their income on salaries and goods, and the scale of revenue collection left very little for money for investment in the hands of the primary producers. So the peasants and the artisans and the poorest among them had barely enough resources for existence, and they could hardly invest in the tools and supplies to increase their productivity. The wealthier peasantry and artisanal groups, the merchants and bankers, profited in this period. So during this period, the persons who were wealthy, like the farmers who were wealthy and the artisans who were wealthy, they get profited during this period, and the persons who were poorer, like farmers or the artisans, they suffered a lot during this period. Let's see about Asaf Jahis of Hyderabad. Weakening of the Mughal Empire in 1720s, the Mughal governors asserted their independence. One of them was the Subedar of the Deccan, Chin Kulich Khan, who known as the Nizamul Mulk. He was the founder of the Asaf Jahi dynasty of the Hyderabad state in 1724. Nizamul Mulk ruled for 24 years. The Asaf Jahi rulers were 10 kings who ruled from 1724 to 1948. Among them, seven kings got the title Nizam from the Mughals. Nazar Jung, Muzaffar Jung and Sabat Jung were not received the title of Nizam. The Nizams constantly fought the Marathas and the rulers of Mysore to carve the independent state of Hyderabad. Due to these reasons, they became dependent on the British and lost their independent status. So during the year 1920 so during the year 1720 this Mughal empire it got weakened, and the Mughal governors they have asserted their independence, and one of them was the Subedar of the Deccan, Chin Khulich Khan. He was also known as Nizamul Mulk. So he was the founder of Asaf Jahi dynasty of Hyderabad state in the year 1724, and Nizamul Mulk they have ruled over 24 years, and the Asaf Jahi rulers they were 10 kings who ruled from 1724 to 1948, and among these 10 kings only 7 kings got the title of Nizam from the Mughals, and these Nizams they constantly fought the Marathas and the rulers of Mysore to carve the independent state of Hyderabad, and due to this reason they became dependent on the British and lost their independent status. They undertook the colonial modernization under the influence of the British officials. The British loved the Hyderabad culture. During late 19th century, Hyderabad embarked on a development. Salajang was the prime minister of the Nizams between 1853 and 1883 who imbibed colonial development scheme. So, these people they have undertook the colonial administration under the influence of British officials, and the British loved the Hyderabad culture, and during the 19th century Hyderabad embarked on development, and Salajang was the prime minister of Nizams between 1853 to 1883, and he imbibed colonial development schemes. The sixth Nizam, whose name is Mir Mehboob Ali Khan, so during his period he marked with a number of reforms. The Asifia Library, Victoria Memorial Orphanage, Mehboobia Girls School were established during this period, and during the Musi floods in 1908 he personally supervised the relief operations, ordered prayers to the god and provided shelter to the victims. So, during the period of this Musi floods in the year 1908, Mir Mehboob Ali Khan, who was the sixth Nizam, he offered prayers to the god and he also provided food and shelter to the victims. And however, we can see that seventh Nizam he determined to protect the feudal power structure despite the popular movements of liberal administrative reforms. So, this was all about our chapter 14th, that is Mughal Empire. I hope you understood this chapter. Let's continue another chapter in next class. Thank you.